Hello and welcome to this week's episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman, and I want to thank you for joining us this week for what I call the Holiday Report. But before we get started, if you're one of our long-term listeners in over 16 countries around the world, in one of the over 400 cities on 5 different continents, I want to thank you for tuning in again and being part of the show. If you're one of our newer listeners, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss a single episode. There is a ton of information in each show to help you make your practice the best it possibly can be. And of course, as always, feel free to go back and check out some of the episodes from the past year with the detailed information you need about how to handle so many of the different challenges of being a practice owner, a successful entrepreneur, to build the life and the practice of your dreams. Welcome to another episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. I've been in practice for over 30 years, and I continue to work in $1 million practice that I built, ran, and sold. I've taught, lectured, and coached our profession, and helped so many chiropractors build the practice and the life of their dreams. And now, I want to help you do the same. So here's today's show. So as I said in the introduction, this week's show, the Holiday Report, is time to sit down and look at some things regarding your practice. The first thing that I want to talk about today is reviewing the year, or what I call the year end. Here we are at the end of December. We've practiced for another year. Maybe it's your first year, maybe it's your 30th year, or even 50th year in practice. Doesn't really matter, but congratulations for every year that you have accomplished. But what we're going to look at is it's time to pull out the statistics and see what we really accomplished. How many new patients did the practice see this year compared to previous years? How many regular patient visits did the practice see this year compared to previous years? And of course, what were your services for the year? And what are your collections for the year? And I sincerely hope that somewhere in your statistics notebook, because I always keep it old school, I have a 3-ring binder, and in the front page of it, I have a page that has my records. What was my number one year, and I think you should too, in each of those different statistics. Regular patient visits, new patients, services, and collections, because obviously we want all of them to be as high as they possibly can be each year. Because as you've heard me say before, record keepers are record breakers. So if we know what our records are, we know what we can do even better next year. Now, I've known chiropractors over the years, in fact, business owners in all different specialties that say, oh, I don't want to look at my statistics. I don't want to see the numbers. It's too depressing. You know what? The numbers aren't necessarily good or bad. They just are what they are. They're an instrument panel. It's a speedometer. It's a measure on your gas tank. It tells you where you are. It's a piece of information. It tells you where you've been. You know what you did this year, and then you can make a decision what's next year going to be. Am I willing to coast? Am I willing to roll up my sleeves, work a little bit harder, a little bit smarter, a little bit faster, and to have, do, and be even more? Or actually, that should be said the opposite way. By rolling up your sleeves and choosing to be more, you'll end up doing more, and then at the end of the year, having more, if that's the goal. And as we talk about next year, have you set your goals not only for the practice, but for yourself personally? There's a whole episode on goal setting and how to do it properly so that you have the information and the drive and the pieces that you need to really keep yourself motivated and keep things going forward. But when we talk specifically about the practice, If the average chiropractor sees about 40 visits a day for each day they're in practice, when you multiply that up, what it means is by the end of the year, the average chiropractic practice sees about 5,000 visits a year. It's not good or bad. It's just what's so. Where are you in that? Are you less? Are you average? Are you more? And better than comparing yourself to others is compare yourself to yourself. Where do you want to be? Where do you think you should fall, knowing that number? And when we talk about setting those practice goals for next year, I think they need to be believable in your mind. You know you can grow to that point. And if they're believable in your mind, then you know what? I'm telling you with experience, they are truly achievable. You can get it done. Now, you may say to yourself, but wait a minute. It's just now Christmas. The year isn't over yet. There's still a week or a week plus left in the year. And that's very, very true. One of the things that I had learned as a very, very young doctor is, you know what? We practice 50 weeks of the year, and the last 2 weeks are the icing on the cake. And the reason for that is during those last 2 weeks of the year, people's health become less of a priority because of all the other things going on. Year-end, Christmas, Hanukkah, family, of course, New Year's, and many businesses have their year-end at the year-end. So people's schedules become very, very difficult for them. I mean, patients, when I'm talking about people. And because of that, we have to do our absolute best to help our patients stay on their schedule. And we're going to take a few minutes and talk about how to help with that right now. So this year, Christmas Day and New Year's Day both fall on a Wednesday. Like it or not, for better or for worse, Wednesday is a full practice day. That's one full day in the middle of each week, 2 in a row, that you're going to be out of the office. I assume your office is going to be closed because of these holidays. So if you're typically seeing your patients on a 3-time per week schedule, and they're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, what's going to happen to that Wednesday visit? For an awful lot of patients in an awful lot of practices, they'll say something like, well, I'll just do Monday and Friday this week, doc. And you have to make a clinical decision. Is that really what's best for their health? Are they going to be okay? I've learned from practicing over so many years, it's really important for people to be as healthy as they can be for Christmas, if you're Christian. And no matter how busy people are, you know what? If they have a chiropractic issue that has sort of been on the edge, a little bit tweaky, so to speak, if you recommend an extra visit because they really need it, they genuinely need it, 9 times out of 10, they hear you and they will listen to your advice. So don't slack off on your patients. Give them your absolute best recommendations for each holiday so that they can be their best for the holiday, no matter what day of the week it happens to fall on. We're talking about Christmas and New Year's right now, but you know what? Throughout the year, there's lots of different holidays. So think about the different holidays that people in your community celebrate, depending on where in the world you're listening to this podcast. Here in the United States, we have things like Labor Day and Memorial Day and July 4th, and of course Thanksgiving. There's Easter Sunday. There's lots of different holidays. I even take time to look at the calendar right now, this time of year, to see when those different holidays fall. What day of the week is it? And start to make decisions about what our office hours are going to look like, which days will be open and closed. And then, of course, as it gets closer, patient by patient, you have a discussion about a week ahead of time, hey, what are you doing for the holiday next week? And they'll tell you. And based on what they're doing for the holiday and what you know clinically about where their health is and the challenges they've been having, you're in a position to make the best recommendations of what they should be doing regarding their care. Maybe it's some additional exercises, or maybe some additional stretches. Maybe it's an additional visit in the office. Whatever it may be, that's your job. That's our job to make sure we're recommending the absolute best for our patients as each of these things come up. So if you're listening to this podcast on the day that it's come out, it's Christmas Eve. And I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday. Are you seeing patients today at all? Most offices that I know are having abbreviated hours and closing early because in a Christian-based community, very, very, very few people, or nobody, will be coming in at the latest hours that most offices typically see patients. And then, of course, Christmas Day. Of course, I assume you're closed. But what about the day after Christmas? In many countries, Boxing Day is a holiday as well. Are you open or not? Is that an extra long holiday for the office staff? Or are you there seeing patients? On holidays like Boxing Day or the Friday after Thanksgiving, those are fantastic days to be in the office. And if you choose to be there to be of service to your patients, what you'll find is that there's an awful lot of patients who are thrilled that you're there, want to come in, are appreciative that you're there so they can get their chiropractic adjustment to be healthier and keep getting better. Another key point that we need to discuss is here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're going into winter. In fact, we've just had the winter solstice. And at least here in the mid-Atlantic portion of the United States, we're starting to have and see snow days. I know different parts of the world have more snow already. Some have less, and some will have none at all. But regarding weather, what's your policy in the office? Do your patients know what your policy is? I call this the snow day policy. Your patients need to know what your policy is. I've known offices that follow the local public school system. Oh, whatever they do, we do. I don't recommend that because schools have to be more finicky with their schedules typically than a doctor's office is. I like the policy of this. Here's our snow day policy. We're always here. If you don't feel safe driving as the patient, that's fine. Call the office, reschedule for earlier in the day, later in the day, the next day, or if they're calling for bad weather tomorrow, you know what? Come in today instead. But we're always here. I want your patients to know that you're always there for them. It builds confidence in you, and they know they've made the right choice to trusting you with their health to be their chiropractor. Because the bottom line is, when you put all of these pieces together that we've discussed over the last several minutes, your goals for the practice, what you've done this year, and you multiply that by the policies that you have, your snow day policy, the schedule that you're willing and planning and to keep for the upcoming holidays in the new year, and your dedication to helping people with a treatment plan that makes sense for their health, what that all spells out is growth of the practice, a healthier community, and they get to thank you for helping them have the best lives possible. And when they're doing that, they end up rewarding you with whatever it is that you want the most of. If it's respect and admiration, it's amazing the things they'll say about you. If it's the money that you want, when you provide fantastic, loving care, being of service to humanity, it just piles up. Sometimes it piles up faster than you even know what to do with it because you're giving so much caring service to your patients, and that's what's important. The money builds up like a byproduct when you breathe. But again, the money's not the goal. It's simply a measure of the loving, fantastic service you have provided from your heart, with your head, your heart, and your hands, helping people to be as healthy as they possibly can. And one final thought, be sure to tune in for next week's show, which I've called the bonus episode, going over some of the things that go on in the adjusting room that you want to make sure you have absolutely mastered these procedures for the best possible outcomes with your chiropractic patients. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.